So, Dean, I just couldn't get enough of the things you had to say when we were first starting to record the show. So you were kind enough to stick around and let us continue the conversation for episode 2. As I told you, I think I've only done this twice in all the shows I've ever done. So
what an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so happy to be back and continue to hopefully add value and hope and inspiration to the people that are listening.
Absolutely. One of the things that when we left off, we talked about your book and how you'd taken the 184-mile swim over 22 days and all the things that you experienced from that. Well, one of the things we talked about was you were then found after the swim and after that period of time in that 40 degree water?
40 degree Fahrenheit. It was between 40 and 45 for the first 16 days. And even with this 3 mil triathlon swims wetsuit, I would go into fairly deep hypothermia within about 30 to 45 minutes. They call it thrombosis or deep core throttle. You know when you're getting there, when your internal organs are banging against your rib cage. And so I get out and I do jumping jacks or run in place on the riverside, and then get back in and do it all over again. That was the biggest challenge, was just keeping my face and my hands in that freezing water all day long.
Well, and as I said at the intro, these are things that you were highly educated and trained for. We don't recommend that anybody just try to go for a river swim to cure themselves.
Oh, please don't.
Please don't
I'm not saying river swimming cures leukemia.
Exactly.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying following your dreams may.
Yeah.
And I'm saying cold water immersion, if done safely, thoughtfully, and in an educated manner, can really help boost your immune system and everything else. But please do it thoughtfully.
Yes. And so we talked about that. And then you tell me then, let's talk. We have time now. So I felt like I had to rush you through because there was so much of your story that we wanted to cover in the first episode. And I didn't want to re-record it and say, well, let's do this over again, knowing we're going to have 2 episodes. Let's just be authentic. Okay. We're going to stick around and have this ongoing conversation. When you're in the swim and you're grief-stricken and you're trying to redirect your life and be an example to your daughter, in addition to just trying to focus on getting the swimming done and keeping yourself alive and getting out for those jumping jacks and keeping your blood flowing to your hands and the places your body needs it, what was it like for you? What was your primary thought process? And more specifically, what was your thought process? What was your thought process when you started compared to when you finished?
Yeah, my process when I started, everyone that's ever lived with me says I'm the most stubborn person they've ever met. And after my first wife died, I made the promise to myself that I would, with all my might, try to take that stubbornness and use it for good. And then, having been a cancer patient and struggled with cancer by this time for 4 years, really 7, I'd been through so many hellish experiences that I don't know that I could have accomplished swimming 184 miles without it. I developed what's called survivor strength. And anytime after 5 or 8 hours of swimming, I mean, you're tired. And
not even, 5 or 8 hours is a really long time. Let's just say an hour, you're tired. Really.
Yeah. No, the hour's fine. It's after you go way past what you thought you could, but you still have to. That's when it gets tough mentally. But having to have developed that muscle, that endurance as a cancer patient, it made it easier, especially on long, cold days when it's raining and no one cares and there's no one on the riverbank cheering me on and there's no press and nothing's happening and you're wondering, why am I doing this? those were the dark days and the very hard times, but they weren't that hard because I felt like I was doing something. Whereas for the last 4 years, I just felt kind of like a target and like a lump. Ever since my first wife died, it just felt like things were happening to me, and I couldn't get any traction in my life to make things happen. And so, even as hard and hellishly so sometimes as it was, two things kept me going. Number one, I had made progress every day in the river. And then two, I had chosen this. I watch some of these endurance athletes and they're crying and screaming and complaining. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys, you signed up for this. You chose to do this and you knew it was hard. Whereas those of us that deal with chronic illnesses or tragic deaths like you have, and I have, we didn't sign up for those things. And they're equally, if not more, difficult and painful.
I find that too when I watch some of those things. There's one particular show that I've watched a couple of seasons of where they sign up and they're dropped off, and I won't give the name of it, but they're dropped off and they're like, you got to figure it out. And they've trained and they've fought hard to do it. And I think it's the same. You get dropped off. It's probably very exciting. The end is way far off.
Right.
And then I watch and I think, but did you not think that this was going to be hard? Didn't you think that in these moments like this, you'd want to quit? And did you have a plan for yourself to not quit? And I think that that's what the difference is sometimes in things like an illness or a treatment or whatever it is that you're going through that it's non-negotiable.
Right.
It's the one thing you can't quit or you will die, whatever that is. And you mentioned earlier, an hour is fine, but, you get to swim in 5-6 hours. Well, in life's terms, we all have what we think is our limit of what we can do. And then we have to push ourselves to the next limit and to the next limit. And whether that's swimming, whatever it is, it's the discipline of doing that extra bit and making progress, whether it's in the water or in life. And so that's why I'm so fascinated by your story and want to share it to this degree the way that we were doing it in 2 episodes on the TV show, is that it is a lesson overall of, no, we didn't choose it. No, we didn't sign up for it, but okay, now what do we do? And you're now, what do we do? What do I do is really big. And I think people can learn so much from you. I've learned so much from you just since I found you a couple of weeks ago, and I've been following you every day. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think your experience has probably been the same as mine. I've really rarely, if ever, heard a cancer patient's story, a cancer survivor's story that doesn't include, I didn't think I could go on, but somehow I found a way. We all, in order to recover successfully, have to develop that ability. And having already had to develop that, it really helped me on the swim. The other thing that helped me was something I'd never heard of. It's something called the Blue Mind. And it is now a almost go-to treatment for trauma. They found that when you're in, on, around, by, or underwater, the human brain, doesn't matter race, culture, age, gender, the human brain within about 2 minutes goes down into a meditative rest state. That's how our brains respond to either being in or on water or by looking at water. And so all day long, I'm floating and I'm swimming and I'm moving with the current. And it took me about 6 days of that, but then I just started noticing I was breathing easier. I wasn't so tragically knotted up all the time in grief. And then, it takes me a little long sometimes. I like to think I'm a bright guy, but it was about day 10, and the river's a pretty wild river for the first 100 miles. And so we'd hit these mini rapids, and we go around boulders and swim around huge Douglas fir trees that had fallen in and different things like that. And I was moving around some boulders, and I was swimming with the river, and it hit me. The water never fights anything. It never wastes its energy. It just moves around. If there's an impediment, it moves around it. It doesn't try to break it or fight it. And I thought, I've been pushing against the big rocks in my life my whole life. I need to develop a way that's much more like water, where I'm elegantly just not wasting my energy and my time. If there's something in my way or somebody that's opposing me, rather than fight them, I just need to move around them. And I just started to relax. And I guess that's fairly common when you spend a lot of time on the water.
That's really, I mean, I'd never looked at it that way. Water in general, you
Sure.
know, I mean, even as a person who's just spent very little time in a river setting. I mean, you know, we go out on our boat or something like that, like the average person, nothing like what you're doing. And it's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about your story. We're talking with Dean Hall for week 2 in a row, The Wild Cure from Death to Life on Oregon's Longest River. We've been talking with Dean Hall. We're unpacking your entire story. Actually, I don't even think 2 episodes would do it, but here we are. And your book, we're talking about your book, The Wild Cure from Death to Life on Oregon's Longest River. You and I both have fired, and that's the word, a provider. You've done it twice. I've done it once. Tell us about your experience in firing the 2 providers along your cancer experience.
Knowing that I'm fighting for my life, literally, who I chose, who I decided to work with, I knew my life depended on it. That's no small gamble. And if I can't step up to the plate for me, I certainly can for my daughter. And so my first thing, my litmus test to my oncologist, because back in Kansas, I had a very trusted doctor friend that helped put me in connection with the right oncologist. But when I moved back to Oregon, I had no one and no connections. So I knew it depended on me vetting these people.
Right.
And so I would go in, and after they told me everything they were going to tell me, I'd kind of lean forward and I say, hey, doc, no disrespect intended. Please know that I appreciate everything you've done to get here and your level of expertise. But I want to be very honest and just speak to you man to man. The way I'm going to approach this is, you are going to be a part of my team. You are not the boss of my body. You are my hired hand. You are my expert consultant. And please know, again, I'm not being disrespectful. I do see you as the expert. But let's be honest. If I die, you're probably not going to even remember. If I die, it affects me, not you. And so I want you to be a part of my team, but know that anything you tell me, I'm going to take everything into consideration and then make a decision about my body. Well, the first guy was furious.
Oh my goodness.
I thought he was going to throw my chart at me. He was so mad he couldn't even speak. He just stood up. He's like, no one's ever talked to me like that.
Well, that's all ego. That's all ego.
I know. And that's what I wanted to tease out. I wanted to see if it was if my treatment was about him or about me.
Exactly.
And so he said, well, I don't work that way. I'm not going to work like that. So you got to do what I say or not. I said, well, that's not going to happen. Please refer me. And he stormed out and even slammed the door. And I thought, well, glad we got rid of that guy.
Glad you got rid of that.
And so he referred me. The next guy, he gave him the same speech. And he was much more polite, but you could see the veil fall.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I don't work like that. And I said, okay, please refer me.
Oh
And
my
he
goodness.
did. And the next guy was younger, and he said, oh gosh, Dean, yeah, this makes perfect sense. I'm happy to work with you. And he was just a loving, caring man. And so I encourage everyone. It's kind of a wonderful litmus test. Be ready, though. You might get kind of what I call an allergic reaction to it.
Right. Well, when the one time that I chose, well, fired, if that's the word, but said, no, this person will no longer be treating my mom. We were out in the hallway and he was adamant that she had about 48 hours to live.
Wow.
And he had misdiagnosed her with an end-stage liver disease that she didn't have. She'd gone from like seemingly healthy one day to the ICU the next. And then within 90 days, she was 90 pounds. And so in this discussion, I just felt like something wasn't right. And I felt like his ego was involved.
It's such a deep need. It's a relationship.
It is.
And, you know, I thought I'd never fall in love again. But I luckily did.
Madly in love, according to your Instagram. Both of your Instagrams.
And that's an understatement. She's just the most beautiful woman inside and out. And when I was dating different women before I found her, I wasn't going to go with the first person that offered to date me. I'm going to find out who they are as a person, because I know the happiness and the health and the wellness of the rest of my life depends on it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're not marrying your oncologist, but you kind of are.
Well, that's life and death too.
It is till death do you part, right? Part. Yeah.
It is.
Wow, I never thought about that. That's great, Lisa. Yeah, it is. It really is. And so it was very important that I found somebody that I felt cared about me and had a loving, kind manner, as well as the credentials behind that. And, you know, I did have one before that, that he was from Uganda, and he was just this big, wonderful man. And he made me cry on one occasion. He did something no doctor's ever done. I was at my worst. I'd almost died from pneumonia, and I was trying to come back, and it looked like it was hopeless. And just before I left, I turned around and he grabbed me by both shoulders and he said, "Go and be well, my friend." And it was so sincere that I was just a mess after that. But I knew he cared. I knew he meant it. It was like he was saying a blessing over me. And that meant so much. And if you don't have that kind of oncologist, you need to find another one, because they're out there. They are.
Yeah, I think bedside manner is an important thing. I think that sometimes, you know, like we say, you're having a bad day, have one difficult appointment, something like that.
Right.
That's one thing. But most definitely, if you don't feel deep down in what you need, you know, wherever that is for you, your gut feeling, your heart, wherever that is, that this is the right fit for you, then do what you did and just kind of hold it like an interview and decide what's the best fit for you.
Because it is.
Because it is. It is an interview.
You've got to, if you want to get better, if you want to have a fighting chance, you've got to be the captain of your own ship. You just do, no matter how scared you are. And I've been there. The first 2 weeks of my first diagnosis, my daughter was 14. And I don't know how many 14-year-old girls you've been around lately, but they need their daddies, I think. And I was terrified that all of a sudden I was going to be gone. And I needed somebody who cared as much about me staying alive as I did.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have just a couple of minutes. We want to talk about the team. We've talked about the doctors, but let's talk about the extended team, which is our chosen family. Dean, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
It's so much fun.
I want to just end with, we've talked about building a team of trusted providers.
Right.
And that team extends to our family, and our family can be our chosen family or a birth family, whatever that team looks like for us. How important was that for you?
Oh, it was extremely important, both on the river and off the river. You've got to have a team, especially I'd like all of you to look at your cancer recovery like a long river swim. When I did my river swim, sure, I was the guy swimming the river, but I needed boaters around me, making sure, number one, I didn't get run over by another boat. But number two, that they could let me know what was ahead so that I could always stay safe. And then I needed people around me to warm me up or notice if I was going into hypothermia too much. The same is true with cancer recovery. You are so in it, you don't even know what you don't know. You don't know how you're experiencing these things and what you're not seeing because it's so scary and so difficult. And many times you're so sick. So it's really important that you have some trusted people, 3 to 5 folks around you, not only cheering you on and supporting you and loving you, but being that extra set of eyes, kind of like you were for your mom. If you hadn't been there, let's face it, your mom wouldn't be here. And so if it's not your family, because so many times our family members can get so scared, they push us to do things to appease their fear, like not fire an oncologist that really doesn't care about you. So it's really important that family or no, you have a few folks around you that can be your chronic illness or cancer recovery team.
It's really true. I feel like when we have a team in anything, whether it's illness or we're going through strife in a marital situation, or we're struggling with whatever we're struggling with in life, if we have those key people that we can count on, it's really important, especially in this case. Dean,
and nothing
absolute pleasure
is successful without them.
Yes, exactly. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I will be following your Instagram for the rest of my days. And
well, thank you, Lisa.
And
likewise, I'm sure. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, I'm in. Obviously.
Yes, thank you so much. Take good care.
You too.